The gods of Daytona Beach have abandoned us. The NASCAR Playoffs are an absolute travesty that has completely ruined the sport. I'm mad as hell and I can't take it anymore. If you feel the exact same way that I do, then you're in luck because I have developed a handy-dandy guide on how to make a video about how bad the NASCAR Playoffs are. My name is James Maillet, aka the biggest NASCAR fan on this godforsaken planet that we call Earth, and this is the NASCAR Playoffs Starter Pack. If you finish well in the first 35 races and wreck out in race 36, tough shit. Wait a minute, this is from a urinating tree video. Oh shit, somebody handed me the wrong script. I sincerely apologize for this egregious mistake. Let me say that over again. You can win the first 35 races of the season, but finish second in the championship race and lose the championship. We know damn well that this is not realistically possible, but we'll act like it's possible even though it's purely theoretical, and you'll believe it because of the implication. Jeff Gordon would have been a 7-time champion, Carl Edwards would have been a 2-time champion, and Kevin Harvick would have been a 4-time champion if the playoffs didn't exist. When you make your video, please refrain from hitting an iceberg and sinking the Titanic, or in other words, don't talk about the fact that if the format was different, drivers and teams would race differently. Make it abundantly clear to the audience that the playoffs have robbed us of some cool storylines, even though you have absolutely no idea if those hypothetical storylines would have actually come to fruition. If someone dares to compare NASCAR to stick and ball sports, politely tell them that they are wrong. It is not the same as a stick and ball sport. We're not insulting your intelligence by telling you something you can clearly see with your own eyes. We know that the amount of people that compare NASCAR to stick and ball sports is so minuscule that it shouldn't even matter, and that we should let the product speak for itself. But how else will people know that it's not the same as a stick and ball sport if we're not constantly reminding them of that fact? And for the love of God, don't compare William Byron and Kevin Harvick losing championships that they deserve to win to the New York Giants beating the undefeated 2007 New England Patriots in Super Bowl 42. Racing is too chaotic for the championship to be decided in one race. Drivers race against each other every single week. They're not going head to head. It's not the same thing. And if you want to compare it to something, compare it to F1 and IndyCar, not the Big Four. And yes, if you're wondering, we are totally secure about the sport we love. Kevin Harvick won 9 times in 2020 and was the class of the field all year long. He deserved to win that championship, and he was screwed out of it because of this stupid playoff format. Some kid that has an animated avatar of himself said that he choked, but that's not true. He had a 42-point lead over the cut line going into Martinsville and controlled his own destiny, despite what happened at Kansas and Texas, and proceeded to have a performance that reeked of his boss's 2004 win at Watkins Glen, but it wasn't a choke. It was all Brian France's fault that Harvick didn't make the championship for in 2020, and I'm willing to bet that he used the ghost of Steve Bartman to make Kevin wreck himself when he was trying to get a single point. Drivers don't care about the championship anymore because the playoff format has completely devalued it. Harvick himself said that the championship would have been a bonus and that the system is skewed towards entertainment. This quote should be used as a representation for how every driver feels about this gimmicky playoff format. It doesn't matter that the drivers don't all think the same and have wildly differing opinions and viewpoints. If Harvick doesn't care about winning the championship, then all the other drivers feel the exact same way. The playoffs are a complete and utter farce that has no place in motorsports. If we had a full season points format, William Byron would have won the championship by 17 points over Denny Hamlin, and Ryan Blaney would have finished a distant 7th in points. In order to ensure that your video is as biased as possible, don't you dare say that this is a hypothetical scenario. I know they would have raced differently. This is just for fun. William Byron is the real 2023 NASCAR Cup Series champion. He was better than Ryan Blaney all season long, but because he couldn't beat him in one race, he didn't get to walk away with the Bill France Cup. That is so stupid. No other motorsport would allow their champion to be decided in such a gimmicky way. Everybody knows that Byron got screwed out of his rightful championship. Byron didn't get screwed over. He was beaten fair and square in a flawed and imperfect format where everyone knows the rules. All William had to do in order to win the championship was beat a driver that had been mediocre for most of the season and had an average finish of 14.6. Ratings for the playoffs have been steadily declining for years, as evidenced by this handy-dandy little graph. If the playoffs were supposed to increase viewership and bring in new fans, then it has failed spectacularly. I know what you're about to say. If we don't have the playoffs, then people will stop tuning in after race 26. That is a complete load of poppycock. You don't need manufactured drama to maintain interest in the final 10 weeks of the season. 8 million people tuned in to watch the 2003 season finale, despite the fact that Matt Kenseth had clinched the championship a week early. I don't care that NASCAR was in the middle of its golden age in terms of popularity, and I certainly don't care that the television and entertainment landscape has significantly changed over the last 21 years, and that it's virtually impossible to get 8 million people to watch a NASCAR race outside of the Daytona 500. NASCAR and NBC could easily get 8 million people to watch the season finale with the full season points format through the sheer power of nostalgia. Mentioning the fact that every championship format is flawed and has been criticized is strictly forbidden. You're not NASCAR Man History and Brock Beard, and if the audience sees that you're unbiased, your very important message won't work. If someone questions you for pulling a Bo Burnham by repeating stuff that a dozen other people have already said, give them a big old fuck you. Then you make it crystal clear that you want to see the best driver all season long be crowned as a champion. It's also important to forcefully insist that the playoffs are actively hurting the sport, and that you're not bitching and complaining into a mic on YouTube. A video bashing the playoffs wouldn't be complete without waxing philosophical about how NASCAR prioritizes entertainment over legitimacy, and that the only way to bring order to the chaos of racing is a full season points format. Make sure to include a revised point system for the modern era in your video, and then drop to your knees and pray to God that the yes men in Daytona Beach will care enough to take your concerns seriously. And when that inevitably doesn't work, the only option you have left is to throw a Hail Mary to the only entity that has more power than the men who sit atop their ivory towers in Daytona Beach.
NBC Television.
You've got complication and confusion inside your DNA because the playoff format is overly complicated and is difficult to understand, with playoff points, stage points, automatic round advancement, win and you're in, and 2 separate point systems. Emphasize that you as a NASCAR fan can barely understand how this all works, and that newer fans won't be able to get invested in the playoffs due to the unnecessary complexity. Since I don't have all day to list off all of the problems with the NASCAR playoffs that you should mention in your video, I'll quickly mention 3 more things that you definitely need to talk about. Win and you're in is stupid and should not exist because mediocre drivers and teams should not be considered championship contenders for winning a single race. Beg NASCAR to bring back the original chase format so that the champion is decided over 10 races instead of just 1. And last, but certainly not least, can someone in charge actually start paying back those diehard fans who are genuinely interested instead of chasing an audience that has not, does not, and will never watch auto racing? Because everybody knows that retirement homes and funerals are 2 things that the 18 to 49 demographic are totally into these days. If you get lost at any point during this process, just make a list of all your talking points and you'll be perfectly fine. Now, I know you're probably worried about being called out for copy and pasting, but I can assure you that you have nothing to be worried about, because the people you're desperately trying to appeal to hate the NASCAR playoffs with a burning passion, and they'll be so consumed by their own bias that they won't even realize that you're being a Mr. Me Too. And you can take solace in the fact that you're nothing like those stubborn jackasses in Daytona Beach that refuse to get rid of this blight to the sport, even though there are plenty of good reasons to do so, which is why we keep making videos where we say the same things over and over again in the hopes that the sanctioning body will finally listen to us, even though they've made it clear through their own actions that this format is here to stay.
Did I ever tell you what the definition of insanity is? Insanity is doing the exact same fucking thing over and over again, expecting shit to change. That is crazy.
Oh shit. What have I done? What have I Well, that's all the time we have for today, NASCAR Nation. I've been your host, James Maillet, and I'll see you next time for another episode of NASCAR is Doomed.